Well, thank you very much, Shuko, for this kind introduction, and it looks very long, and I try to make my speech short. Too many things to speak about. I have indeed 20 minutes to try to take you into the business model behind circular economy. There is an easy introduction to this METS conference, and ICOMIA as well, is the fact that the leading person and foundation that's carrying circular economy today in the world is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and you all know Ellen MacArthur for her sailing abilities. And she realized when she came back from a round the world race that the ecology was a major issue, and realized that the problem on Earth was not only energy, but resources and the way we use them. So she got inspired by a number of people to work on the concept of changing our world, industrial world, from linear economy, which is take, make, use, and waste. That's the arrow on the left, to circular economy. Circular economy is a continuous cycle. It's not just closing the loop, reusing once something. Circular economy is a continuous cycle. It will be divided in two cycles, you will see, which is the technological cycle, which probably interests us more in the leisure marine industry, and the biological cycle, which is basically turning biological matter back to humus, back to nature. But for that, it has to be pure. These are the two cycles. You will see on the left-hand side that, let me point this out, we talk about consumers. When it's about food, when it's about using biological material, we consume it, we transform it, we digest it, okay? We consume. For technological material, there are users. In fact, we are just the user of the material for a certain time, and then the material has to go back in this continuous cycle. And what I will try to prove you today, that it is a business model behind all of your industries. I can tell you that nobody in the room can escape from that. We were discussing last night and this morning about the new regulations from Europe, from all around the world, that are going towards circular economy and certainly getting rid of all the toxic materials throughout. I won't go into details. Circular economy, so I have to apologize. Normally I talk about, as Yuko explained, I'm an architect, so normally I talk about buildings and about, well, sometimes marinas as well, about buildings and about urban areas. Circular economy is about eco-design. It's really designed properly with whatever. That's when you decide what material, what elements you're going to use, how performant, how nice your tool will be. Then is to look at the industry and how the industries can be linked. So the waste from one can be used as nutrient for the next one. We'll see that as well. Functionality saving, and as you see, I've illustrated with marine-like things I could find on the internet. Is functionality saving is basically renting, leasing, or sharing the equipment. Reemployment, well, you use a boat, you reuse it, you use elements, you reuse again. And then, of course, repair. Repair is very important to prolong the life of some material and some equipment. And then reuse. I just took the example of these bags that are made out of sail materials. And then at the end of the day, the whole aim is that, for instance, this is, I think it is polyester back to raw material, is how we go back to raw material. And this is one of the biggest challenges, I think, in the boat industry. We'll see that as well. Now, circular economy is good. It's a cycle. But it has to be a cycle that improves at each cycle. So it's a continuous cycle, but at each cycle, it needs to improve. And for that, Michael Braungart is a German chemist, and Bill McDonough is an American architect, designed the idea of cradle to cradle. Cradle to cradle is, again, these two technological and biological cycles put together, but it's mainly trying to see how we can go back to the raw material and purify it at each cycle. So the value goes up, and you'll see that's part of the economical model. The whole idea is that we need to, rather than keep minimizing our negative impact on the environment, which we need to keep doing, of course. All industries, everybody has to minimize our negative impact, stop polluting, basically, stop using too much fuel, stop using too much energy, too much material, too much resources. But no business like to tend towards zero, you know, zero CO2, zero energy, zero, it's going down, it's not very exciting. So what we work on is to optimize our positive impact. We can be like a tree, we can be like anything in nature. There's no reason why human beings should be the only stupid animal on earth that cannot have a positive impact. An ant has an enormous positive impact, and they're more numerous than we are, and they don't destroy the planet. We call that difference between eco-efficiency. Eco-efficiency is to be less bad, to correct ourselves, and you're bad, you're driving too much, you're bad, your house is heated too high, whatever, you're really a bad human being. And then eco-effectiveness, which is let's do something which has a positive impact in these cycles. So how does that work? Well, if I try to bring it to your businesses, for us to minimize negative impact is about energy consumption, and we all know that, reduce that, whether it's in the factory, whether it's the boat itself, whether it's the equipment that we use. And then the wastewater treatment, that could be in your factory, but it's also the wastewater from the boat or from the marina and all these elements. I'm just giving it a few examples. Is of course respecting nature and the sea. Fortunately, most of your customers or people using boats, they have one good thing is they are in contact with the sea, so normally most of them should actually be aware of the importance of that. And then, of course, reduce waste. But what I'm going to talk about now is the positive impact element, which are the business opportunities for you, is the sharing economies. The economy of functionality is basically using products rather than owning products. Boats use as material banks. Normally, we say building as material banks for the future. Design and technology innovation, which is the basis for business and R&D, and to create a positive impact on the environment. There's no reason why a boat berth should not be an artificial coral reef, for instance, and we've designed some in the past. Now, if I look at the first point, and you see, I just say here, better business opportunity through sharing economy, I just found that in the built industry, in the built environment in our cities, Airbnb is probably one of the most recent change where people start sharing their own house, their own apartment, make a business out of it, or just help the money at the end of the month. And in fact, I found two very quickly on internet. Is Get My Boat on one side, and is the other one is peer-to-peer yacht charters. It's basically people exchange boats. You use my boat when you are in New Zealand, and I use your boat when I'm in Finland. Okay, so it's that sort of thing. And in the car industry, you'll see in the demonstration I'll do, I will compare the building industry, the marine industry, and the car industry, because for me, marine industry is between the two in terms of the numbers being produced. Well, we all know about the Uberization of mobility today. I don't think I need to expand on that. There is an opposition between what I call the Zapping Society. People want to do one thing here, they want to be there tomorrow. I mean, my children, they have no idea. They don't want to own a car, as long as they can use mine. But no, they don't want to own one. They want to have the right of mobility, a way of mobility. They want the right to live somewhere. My daughter is 17. She doesn't know if she's going to study in Holland or in Belgium or maybe in New Zealand. She doesn't want to be stuck with something she owns, and that even if it's given to her, it doesn't interest her. And I think for that, floating devices, boats, and all the industry you're involved in should become a service product. A service product is something you don't own, you just pay for the service. And in fact, this exists today in the built environment. On the left-hand side, you see a shared office, what we call startup companies and all these things, shared office. On the right-hand side, you know all these cars you can go and pick just with a card in the streets, mainly electric cars most of the time. And then there are companies, again, I found on the internet, it's coming, is own a boat for a day. So you don't own it, you use it, but it's quite interesting that the title says own a boat for a day. And then maybe one day you take one type of boat, next day you take a jet ski, and the third day you take a Zodiac, or you can choose. Car industry is doing that as well. Renault is doing that as well. You have a contract to have mobility, and you can have from a bicycle to a small lorry. And you take it as you need. Now, marine equipment, so that was for the boats themselves, for the complex elements, but let's say the less complex components of the marine industry, again, can be used rather than consumed. And let me explain that. In the building industry, on the left-hand side, you can pay your light per lux that you use. The lux is the power of light, okay? So, in fact, companies like Philips Lighting have decided some time ago not to sell lamps anymore, but to sell light. And so the lamps remain with Philips, and the lamp goes back to their factory when it's finished. And in fact, they're responsible to keep the performance going. So you have a partnership with Philips Lighting. You have the same with carpets. You have the same with partitions in building. You can rent them. And when you want to change, okay, you pay something, but the idea is that you can change it because all the materials that you are using are going back to the factory to do the same thing, either just reused or revamped or reused as from raw material. Or you can go in a different industry as well. So there is no waste produced. There is no reason why you should own the engine of your boat. Like there is no reason why you should own the lift in your building. And in fact, there is no reason why you should own the car or own the, the steering wheel of your car. Everything could, at the end of the day, be rented. I created a shock in Berlin some years ago in the lift industry conference, just like this, all the manufacturers and suppliers. And I said, look, in 10 years' time, and that was about 10 years ago, in 10 years' time, you will not sell lifts anymore. So, big silence. And then suddenly I said, no, but you're going to rent them. And this is coming. This is coming on the market. Because the engine, you cannot work on it yourself. The engine, you cannot easily transform it or tune it or do things to it yourself. Basically, you want to buy a service. You want the service of what an engine can do. And if it's made to be built for disassembly, it means that the engine can easily be taken out, or every element of the boat. And in fact, it's quite easy because boats or buildings are made, they pour concrete and whatever, and then it's difficult to dismantle. So we have to really change the mentality in the construction industry to make and you see it on the left-hand side, to make buildings really separable into the organic matter, timber, all sorts of biosourced products that go back to humus, or technical matters, including concrete and the steel and all these things. Well, in the building industry is doing it today, is starting, because it makes sense economically, and I will say a bit more about that. Cars are customized, and I really say customized because it's computerized. You can do, every car coming out of a factory is in fact different. And here the illustration is from Tesla's factory. The batteries and the car and all the elements, they buy it back for about 50,000 euro when you give the car back. And in fact, they prefer to lease it to you, so they remain owner of the batteries mainly, but also of all the raw materials. And in fact, it's built for disassembly. It's built for reuse many times. Now, boats are built in shipyards. It's not like buildings where it's built under the rain and everything else. So it should be easy to make built for disassembly boat. And when you do built for disassembly, you transform these boats into raw material bank for the future. And these are examples. In the building industry, we start to either use containers or design buildings as if they were built as a pile of containers, meaning you can take them away, you can bring them built off-site and build them on-site. Then it allows you to have a material passport. Material passport is something that defines in your building all the elements that are in there, and in which quantity, what is the quality, what is the chemical content, what can you do with these products afterwards. And this brings value to all the material you have in a building. You know that if you want to demolish a building, whatever size it is, the demolition man comes and say, it's 200,000 euros to knock it down. He's going to reuse all these materials, but not always in the right way, and very often, under the table type of thing. Now it's changing. When you put millions in material in buildings, then you want to be able to get it back. Maersk, the Danish company, designed the largest boats ever done for container carriers. It's worth going on their site and look what they do. In fact, they recuperate all the steel from their boats at the end of the boat. It's designed for disassembly to be a material bank. Now, what is your industry doing? I'm sorry, but it's a big problem for me with all these polyester, glass fiber hulls and all this stuff, which if you look at that little sentence on the right-hand side, that basically the only way you can do it is cut it in pieces and do through pyrolysis with a lot of energy, whatever, to get rid of it. And you don't even come out with a good material out of it. So I know there is some progress in there. But if we thought about what I'm telling you about today, and I suggested that 4 years ago to a friend of mine who was getting involved in the America's Cup, why don't we design a new regulation in the America's Cup that all the boats have to be cradle-to-cradle inspired or circular economy inspired? They do it with Formula One today with electric cars, why the boat industry cannot do the same? And a lot of materials today are very difficult to change. So for me, that's a challenge I would like to put to you. I know that a lot of boat industries don't have a huge R&D capacity, but the industrial who are doing the products, polyesters and all the products, all the glues and all that, you have to challenge them. If you don't ask them, they will not do it. I know that as an architect. Now, why is it a business model? And I go very quickly here, because time is passing fast. Well, if you look at this is the material you put in your, let's say in your boat, or I'll say it for building because it's easier for me, but it's the same principle. You put materials, and when you start, and while your building ages, in fact, the value of material, even if it goes up and down according to whether or not Trump is elected or crazy things like that, you have globally a steady rise, and sometimes really for some material it goes up. Why? Because the resources are getting scarce. During that time, your building value, same with your boat, goes down. And somebody will tell you, I have to pay, or you have to pay me to get rid of your building. You have to pay me to get rid of your boat. It has a cost. Now, how to avoid that? Well, if you have the inventory of what is in your boat, what you do, the assessment of what can be reused, if you design it from the beginning to be of quality, elements of quality, which I'm sure you do, if mainly you design for extraction, because your boat is becoming a bank of material, you need to be able to easily remove it without having to spend a lot of labor, a lot of energy to separate things, especially with all the materials mixed, glues and all that is very difficult. And then you need to do partnership. You are all partners in the marine industry, and you really need to play on that to make it strong. It means that you can gain again this value that you've lost. What it means, oops, sorry, yeah, here we are. What it means that if you buy a boat, this is the Tesla of the sea, by the way, I was told, it has a certain value. But if you take a building, and it's the same for a boat, the value, once you have to put money back to change it from office to residential, for instance, something, you put some money back. In fact, the original value of the material you've put in goes down, because you have to put money to keep it going. And you can reuse the building, and then you can reuse the components. Again, this bag made out of sails, same parallel with boats. Every component could be reused maybe on another boat, or could be restored. And then, again, my raw material thing here, and everything metal you can easily recuperate. This has a value. This has a positive value. If you don't do it, you have the scrapyard, and that's your negative value. Today, we can get finance for buildings that will have a positive value because of this communication, that if all the elements from the building can be reused, then it has a value. The notion of waste is something you don't know where it is, you don't know what's in there, it's probably toxic, and you don't know what to do with it. So it has a negative value. when you have a raw material you can reuse, it has a positive value. Now, just a couple of subjects to finish. You have the same problems in boats than you have in buildings and you have in cars. It's air quality in all of those. And currently we're working with bacteria to clean rather than using chemicals. And I saw that sick yacht syndrome exists like car sick syndrome, which are basically due to mainly all the materials that are used in there, which create COVs and pollution. And we spend a lot of time in there. Maybe less in boats than in houses and in cars, but it depends who. Now, there is another element. Innovation is coming from your industry many times, and you can see that in all of them it's evolving. And what is interesting is that the direct current that is actually produced by photovoltaic cells should be used directly as direct current and should not be transformed. And the best one for that has been always the marine industry. Most of the boats are on direct current because they work on batteries and whatever. So I was told on large boats, commercial boats, the level of power that is installed is very high, and it's in direct current. And all this technology exists now. And of course, it's the same evolution in the car industry. Now, just to make a quick parallel because time is over, talking about the ICOMIA conference. It's a pity I cannot take part in that because that's really a passion for me, is that for me, marinas should be, this is one example, but should really part of cities. They should be used not as a car park outside somewhere where boats are just sleeping. They should be used and should be part of everyday's life. And that's where I said it's good for wildlife like we do in buildings. I see some trends, again, on the internet on water treatments and what we can do to clean marinas, and people are more and more sensitive of that. Your end customers are more and more sensitive to that, and we can certainly do a lot in that world. So, as I said, great innovations, normally they come from the top industries, the leaders in the industry, and everything that sails, everything that goes on water, marine technologies are very much advanced. So for once, you have always been an example for me. When I design building, I always look at boats, at planes and whatever to find materials, find light structures, find new trends, new designs. And for once, in terms of materials, I think you are a little bit behind now. This is my challenge now. I think you need, and I'd love to have some people telling me that they are doing very well and there are new material that are completely upcyclable now. But the thing you need to remember, it's not a cost. It's actually improving your business. And I thank you very much. What I would like is to work on this roadmap with you. Nobody's perfect from the first day, but it takes probably about a few years. But you have to start now to improve step by step. Thank you very much.